Gentlemen, good evening, good morning, and welcome back to the Gentleman Warrior podcast with me, Rob Rubin, where men's mental health matters. And I know it's been a while because I've been kind of working on certain things, but I always made the intention to come back to this, and lo and behold, here I am. Because today, for this episode of the Gentleman Warrior podcast, I'm going to be talking about something that is kind of a blind spot for a lot of us men out there. And that's the topic of trauma dumping. Yeah, there's a term, trauma dumping. I heard it from somebody I really had a lot of feelings for. And I didn't know that this was already classified as a modern term. But I will go on the record of just basically sharing with you all what trauma dumping is and why we shouldn't resort to this. Basically, I'm just going to start by saying this. Gentlemen, you matter. Your feelings matter. What you went through, you didn't deserve it. It most likely was very, very traumatic. And for whatever sliver of hope there was, you survived it. And I'm happy that you're watching this. I'm happy that you're able to interact with this, that another day was given to you. But with these traumas that we go through, men, it tends to take a toll on our mind, our bodies, and our souls. And sometimes the only thing we can do is really talk about it. However, I've realized that due to the horrendous amount of pressure put on us, we'd be a little bit too willing to share what happened to us with almost anyone. And we start unloading and sharing with our friends, our family, our social circles, sometimes with our partners, our relationships. This is trauma dumping. When you really unload a lot of emotional baggage because of something very painful that happened to you to another person. And for the life of me, this is so ironic coming from me because I know I'm guilty of this. This is something we need to stop doing to just anyone. Why? Because when we trauma dump on people, there's really only one of three outcomes. The ideal outcome is that we meet somebody who understands our plight and who is a stranger in a dark time. That's what we're desperate for when we trauma dump. Relief, understanding, and support. But rarely is that what we get. The other two outcomes are A, the person that we trauma dump to begins to pity us. Let me repeat that. The person that we trauma dump to begins to pity us. And when you pity someone, you're basically lowering your value of them. Because something that's pitiable is considered pathetic by most. Sympathy, pity. Again, this is not discounting or dismissing what you've been through, gentlemen. I'm just stating a fact. If people start pitying you, it means that they're already looking down at you. Think about it. Number two, which is even worse, people will just lose respect for you. And I've noticed that sometimes in a professional setting, a social setting, we could already be at a certain level. And once we start trauma dumping to people, they thought of us like this, and then they begin to start thinking of us less and less and less. Then at the end of the day, we think, well, oh wow, I was able to share it with him or her. They must really love me. Actually, no, your value is going down and down and down. The more you do it, the less valuable you become to them. This is a fact. You start getting less phone calls. You start getting less invites because they'll always think of you as the guy who's got a chip on his shoulder or an issue or a trauma, and they don't want to carry that. Now, what can we do? And this is where I'm saying your feelings matter. Because we should not be forced to just live alone and hold it all in. Like sometimes we even do this to our romantic partners. when they arrive, oh my God, thank God you're here. And we just unload on them all the trauma and pain we've been through. And then we wonder why they start losing respect for us. And then we wonder why they leave us. Because that's not what they signed up for. And it's a sad reality, actually, that this is what it is. But what can we do? First and foremost, get a therapist, literally. Find a professional or a place like a support group where you can feel safe with sharing what you're going through. It's not going to be something that's going to be available all the time. But these safe spaces, like a support group or a therapist, are places where you're almost absolutely sure not to be judged. Just like you wouldn't judge an alcoholic in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Because they're trying to get better. That's the key word, you're trying to get better. A therapist, on the other hand, is very valuable because you're paying them to have an objective outside look of what's going on with you. And quite frankly, I'm very thankful for the therapist that I have. She's helped me dearly. Another individual that you could sometimes do this with, if you've had somebody who has pretty much been with you all your life and they have seen the worst of you and they have seen the worst you had to offer, you've gotten drunk on their doorstep, you vomited, you crapped your pants in front of them. If you have such an unconditional relationship, usually this comes in family, like siblings or parents, this is where you can trauma dump. I've never heard a story of a mother or a father abandoning their child for trauma dumping, because if they did that, they're no mother or child. And I don't think it would be proper if a sibling would do that. But, you know, the weaker the ties, the less tolerance there is, because you're really asking them to sort through your guck. Because at the end of the day, when people don't respect you, that's when abuse begins. When people look down on you, that's when the abandonment begins. And a lot of the times, the reason we had such a great relationship and then it just de-evolved into abandonment and abuse is because we showed too much vulnerability to the wrong person. I am not saying that you have to keep this all in. Again, you do need to process this with the right people. But not everyone deserves to hear your story. Because not everyone cares. Quite frankly, when you share to them what's going on with you, a good percentage of them are actually happy it's happening to you. Quite frankly, when you share to someone how traumatic an incident was, a lot of the time they don't give a damn. So why lower your value to people who don't give a damn? Why put that kind of power and vulnerability into the hands of people who don't give a damn? A good friend of mine, Dr. Jeremy Wise, said, also avoid doing this with people who are subordinate to you. Like, if you're a business owner or a community leader, don't trauma dump onto your subordinates, because that's when they're going to start disrespecting you. That's when they're going to start missing meetings or deliverables, because they'll say, oh, I had you on this pedestal before, but now I have you less because you know what? You can't get over your boyfriend, which is cruel. But the mistake we made was we shared it to them to begin with. I'd like to say treat your vulnerabilities and your traumas like trading stocks. Trade the wrong one at the wrong time and you could lose everything. But if you trade it carefully, this can become a meaningful exchange of vulnerability between two souls. But the truth is, a majority of the time we trauma dump is because we are expecting someone to save us. And if it's one thing these past 3 years has taught me, no one is going to save you. Only the man in the mirror. And I believe in that man. I believe you have the strength save yourself. But I also believe you can't do it alone. So look for support. Don't look to be carried. If you don't know the difference, support is you get in the ring and these people are in your corner. Being carried means they get in the ring for you. That never ends nicely. And remember, gentlemen, your feelings matter. Okay? It's just we, due to our desperation to survive, end up sharing these valuable feelings to people who don't know their value. And when we get shunned or dismissed or ignored, it only makes us feel worse. So to prevent that from happening, speak to the right people. I'm going to make a shout out to certain people who I've personally felt safe enough to trauma dump to. One is my therapist, Bic Bic. She has been such a pillar in my life since 2017. Number two, Marcus, my best friend. There's nothing we have not been through together. And I know he won't judge me because he's seen the worst of me and I've seen the worst of him, and we chose to still stay friends. So every time I see him, a certain level of safety I feel, because I know he hasn't ditched me at my worst. So he won't ditch me now. If you can find somebody like that, even one person, treasure that. But another thing I'm going to tell you too is this, don't make your support system your therapist either. Just because I have a Marcus doesn't mean I'm calling him every day asking him to solve my problems. Because he's got his own problems. I really only call people like that now if I'm really against the wall. But that's a topic for another day. So take care, boys and girls.